The little boy didn't even ask. He just saw the man sitting on the curb outside the corner store, shoulders shaking, face buried in his hands, and he wrapped his tiny arms around him. "It's okay, mister," he whispered. "You can cry with me." The man looked up, eyes red, but no one realized he was the Malcolm Wade, the billionaire who had lost everything just hours earlier. And what Malcolm did next left the investors at East Bridge Capital speechless. Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more videos like this. Let's begin. Malcolm Wade had been called many things: visionary, ruthless, Wall Street's golden boy. But at 10:27 a.m. on a Wednesday, as he slumped on a chipped concrete curb outside Grayson's Deli in downtown Nashville, he was just a man whose world had collapsed. His billion-dollar hedge fund, Wade and Hillman Capital, had just imploded under federal scrutiny. The scandal hadn't been his doing. The betrayal came from the inside, from someone he'd raised like a brother. He hadn't spoken since the phone call. Not a word. His tie hung loose around his neck, his suit jacket wrinkled, and his fingers trembled as they hovered near his mouth like he was holding in a scream. Then, without warning, warmth. Two little arms wrapped around his torso from the side. He flinched at first, but then froze. The boy, no older than 6, had chocolate smudged on his shirt and a backpack that looked too heavy for his tiny frame. "You look like my Uncle Ray," he said, resting his cheek against Malcolm's sleeve. "He cries too, but I tell him it's okay." Malcolm blinked. He hadn't been touched like this, without agenda, without calculation, in years. From the corner of his eye, a young woman gasped. "Benny," she called, rushing over. "I'm so sorry, sir. He's just a little." But Malcolm held up his hand, his voice a whisper. "No, please don't." His lips trembled. "He's the only human who's looked at me today and didn't want something." The woman, Olivia, looked stunned. Are you okay?" "I lost everything," Malcolm said quietly. And somehow, that hug felt like the only thing that mattered. And just like that, Olivia sat beside him too. Olivia didn't know who the man was. Not yet. She only saw a human unraveling on the edge of a sidewalk, a man too well-dressed to be homeless, but too hollow-eyed to be whole. Benny leaned into him again, offering a crumpled cheese sandwich from his lunchbox. "You can have mine," he said proudly. "Mom says I'm strong enough to skip lunch." Malcolm stared at the soggy bread and yellow smear between the slices like it was caviar. His throat tightened. "Kid, that's the kindest thing anyone's done for me in years." "You gotta eat when you're sad," Benny said wisely, "'cause otherwise the sad eats you." Olivia knelt, her eyes scanning the man's face again. "I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name." He hesitated, then lied. "Mark." She raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. "Well, Mark, it's not every day a grown man gets tackled by a 6-year-old therapist. We were just grabbing water before his checkup. You need anything? Coffee, maybe?" "I'm fine," Malcolm said, though his cracked lips and trembling fingers told a different story. She didn't push. Instead, she opened her canvas bag, handed Benny his water bottle, and let silence stretch comfortably between them. A city bus rumbled past. Pigeons hopped between crumbs on the curb. Malcolm finally spoke. "I built an empire on numbers," he muttered, voice low. "Graphs, ratios, predictive algorithms. I believe in logic, not luck. But none of that matters when the betrayal comes from someone who knows all your blind spots." Olivia tilted her head. "Sounds like more than just a bad day." "It's worse," he said. "I was supposed to be in a boardroom this morning. Instead, I was in a federal office, signing over control to a man I once mentored. A man I trusted like blood. Business partner. Cousin. There it was. Just enough truth to pierce the air." Olivia looked down, her fingers tightening around Benny's backpack straps. "My ex-husband did something like that," she said after a long pause. "Left us with nothing but debt. We lived in our car for a month. Benny was 3. Malcolm looked at her for the first time. Really looked. Not as a stranger. Not as background noise. But as someone who knew the ache he carried. "How'd you survive?" "Kindness. And anger." She smiled faintly. "Mostly kindness." He stared at the child, now poking his stick into a crack in the pavement. "I've spent years surrounded by people in tailored suits. No one ever offered me half a sandwich. Not even when I made them millionaires." "I guess your circle's missing a Benny," she said. That made him laugh. Really laugh. It cracked out at him like lightning, sharp and painful and real. I used to be someone, he said. You were someone, she corrected. No, I mean someone with weight. I'd walk into rooms, and CEOs would stand. Now, they're probably already circling like vultures, waiting to see what pieces they can pick off the carcass. He stood, pacing suddenly. The blood returned to his face. They think I'm out. Done. Ruined. But they forget, when you've built something once, you can do it again. Olivia stood too. Then why were you sitting on the curb crying? He blinked. The question hit harder than he expected. Because I didn't think anyone would see me as a man again. Just a headline. A failure. Olivia stepped forward, close enough that their shadows overlapped on the sidewalk. If you think success is what makes a man, then you've already lost. But if you remember who you are, at your core, you've still got shot. Benny ran up, his tiny hand tugging on Malcolm's coat. Are you coming with us? We're going to Dr. Mabel's. She gives me lollipops even when I cry. Malcolm looked stunned. You want me to come? Benny shrugged. You're sad. Mom says sad people should have someone walk with them. You can be part of our group hug day. Malcolm smiled, eyes stinging again. I don't even know your real name. Olivia whispered, a little softer now. He exhaled. Malcolm Wade. Her breath hitched. She looked him up and down, the name striking a faint chord. Wade as in Wade and Hillman. The one and only, he said bitterly. Or, the one and former, I should say. Olivia didn't speak right away. But then she nodded. All right, Malcolm. You've still got your feet, your breath, and a 6-year-old general offering you orders. That means you've still got options. He followed them down the sidewalk, and for the first time in a long time, Malcolm Wade wasn't leading. He was simply walking beside someone. As they reached the end of the block, Malcolm turned to Olivia. Would you believe me if I told you? I feel lighter. She smiled. I believe you more if you told me you'd try again. I'm not done, he said firmly. Eyes sharper now. But this time, maybe I'll build something that matters. And as they disappeared into the clinic, no one on that street knew that the man they just passed, the one smiling softly at a child, was about to pull off the most dramatic comeback the financial world had ever seen. Malcolm Wade didn't sleep that night. He tried, but the sound of Benny's innocent laughter, the feel of Olivia's quiet strength beside him, the echo of her words, if you remember who you are at your core, kept him wide awake in the downtown motel he checked into under the alias Mark Weaver. He stared at the ceiling fan as it turned slowly overhead, a distant hum like the boardroom buzz he used to command. He wasn't just thinking about revenge. No, he was strategizing redemption. But this time, it wouldn't come through numbers. It would come through people. By sunrise, Malcolm sat in a corner booth of a 24-hour diner in jeans and a hoodie, sipping black coffee and sketching something strange on the back of a paper placemat. Not numbers. Not forecasts. Names. He wasn't alone anymore. With each name he wrote down, he remembered someone who had once stood behind him not for power, but for principle. The janitor at HQ who he gave a loan to when his wife was sick. The receptionist he promoted when she brought in her autistic brother's invention that changed their logistics model. The coder who built a revolutionary stock alert system and left when Wade's cousin took all the credit. These people weren't pawns. They were soldiers. And Malcolm was ready to assemble a new kind of army. He dialed his old burner. Jen, it's me. I'm not asking for loyalty. I'm asking if you still believe in me. A pause. Then, where do I show up? Call after call. The response was the same. You're back. About damn time. Tell me when. I never unpacked. By 9 a.m., Malcolm was in a borrowed conference room behind a closed-down real estate office. Walls covered in post-it notes, laptops open, coffee cups everywhere, and 7 of his most trusted ex-employees buzzing with something they hadn't felt since the beginning. Hope. Olivia entered hesitantly, holding Benny's hand. You said you had something to show me? Malcolm grinned. Come on in. You're about to watch a phoenix get built, wing by wing. Across town, at East Bridge Capital, Randall Hillman, Malcolm's former partner and betrayer, sipped aged scotch like it was Gatorade. His lawyers assured him the media storm would pass. He'd spun the narrative perfectly. Malcolm was to blame. The paper trail had been forged months ago. The investors were sheep. All he had to do was keep the wolves fed. He leaned back in his Italian leather chair and muttered, "Let him rot. No one recovers from a scandal like this." But Hillman did know something. Malcolm didn't want to recover. He wanted to rebuild. Differently. Stronger. Cleaner. Back in the pop-up war room, Malcolm stood before a cracked whiteboard. "We're not chasing profit," he said. "We're chasing proof. We're going to expose what they did to our clients, what they did to me, what they've done to this industry." He turned to Olivia. "I need someone the media won't expect. Someone with no corporate record. Someone who can sit across from billionaires and not blink. Will you?" She blinked. "Are you asking me to be your co-founder?" "I'm asking you to be my truth check. Because I never want to become what I was again." She smiled slowly. "Then you've already changed." Benny raised his hand from the corner. "Can I be the hug manager?" Laughter filled the room for the first time. Real laughter. The next week was a blur. The team hacked together a platform that exposed unethical fund manipulation, using anonymized data Malcolm still had access to. Olivia fronted the press as the soft but fearless voice of the startup, now dubbed Ashline Equity, a name born from the phrase, "ashes into a new line of fire." A viral tweet showed Benny hugging Malcolm on the sidewalk, unknowingly captured by a food delivery biker. It read, "A billionaire had just lost everything. This boy didn't care. He just hugged a stranger." It exploded online. Malcolm didn't ask for fame, but now he couldn't avoid it. By the end of the week, Malcolm Wade was trending again, but this time, the tone was different. He wasn't a fallen mogul. He was the man who got up, with kindness as his crutch. At Eastbridge Capital, investors began asking questions. Why are people moving their funds to Ashline Equity? What's this story about data integrity? Did you really betray Wade? Randall Hillman's smirk began to twitch. The cracks were showing. He called a meeting with media consultants, PR experts, lawyers. But the damage had already begun. Ashline wasn't just a comeback. It was a reckoning. Late one night, Olivia found Malcolm on the rooftop of the co-working space. "You okay?" she asked. He didn't speak for a moment. Then, "I always thought losing everything would kill me. But now I see. It was the only way I'd ever start over right." He looked at her. "Thank you. For sitting on that curb. For not walking past me." She smiled. "Well, thank Benny. He's got a better radar for good people than I do." He chuckled. He may have just saved $1 billion soul. And as the city blinked with lights far below, Malcolm Wade finally let himself believe he wasn't done. Not even close. The headlines arrived like gunshots. Former CEO Malcolm Wade resurfaces, backed by whistleblower claims. Ashline Equity accuses Eastbridge of fraud. Hillman silent. Benny's hug sparks Billionaire comeback. Randall Hillman slammed his phone onto the marble counter of his penthouse suite. "They're turning him into a saint," he barked, veins pulsing at his temple. He was finished. "I finished him." His legal counsel, Morton Gray, shifted nervously. "Sir, they've got something. We don't know it yet, but the investors are jittery. One of the pension boards already requested a withdrawal." Randall's lips curled. "Find out what Wade has, and shut it down." But Malcolm wasn't playing the same game anymore. In a dusty converted garage on the east side of Nashville, now filled with laptops, posters, and stacks of evidence, the Ashline team worked like soldiers preparing for war. They weren't just building software. They were building truth. Olivia stood by a corkboard with pinned photographs, receipts, and internal emails. "You're telling me Hillman laundered stock earnings through 4 dummy firms across state lines under your name?" Malcolm nodded grimly. He knew I wouldn't notice. I was busy raising capital for our education fund. He used my credibility like a signature stamp. And the SEC? They'll act if we can provide one irrefutable connection. I think I found it. A company called Coral Systems. On paper, it looks clean. But there's one transfer, $500,000, labeled as a consulting retainer, to a shell account in Belize. And a login for that approval. It wasn't mine. You can prove that. He turned to the screen. Already did. That login came from a Miami IP address. While I was on a flight to Zurich. Olivia whistled. That's the match in the gasoline. 2 days later, Ashline Equity held a press conference. Malcolm didn't wear a suit. He wore a gray sweater and stood behind Olivia as she stepped to the mic. "I'm Olivia Kerr," she said. "You don't know me, and that's the point. I'm not here because of legacy. I'm here because I saw a man at his lowest and watched him choose to rebuild with honesty instead of ego." Gasps rippled when Malcolm stepped forward. "My name is Malcolm Wade, and this is not a redemption story. This is a reckoning. I was betrayed by someone I trusted. Randall Hillman. Today, I'm releasing over 200 internal documents to the public and the SEC. Documents that prove embezzlement, fraud, and exploitation of our clients. Flashes exploded. Reporters screamed. But Malcolm stayed calm. I have nothing left to lose, except my name, and I intend to earn it back. Meanwhile, inside Eastbridge Capital, chaos reigned. Emails flooded in. Withdrawal notices. News agencies. And then, the SEC called. Randall grabbed his coat and snapped at his assistant. Get the lawyers on standby. Tell them I'm not doing interviews. But when he walked into his private elevator, a man already stood inside, arms folded. Who the hell are you? Randall barked. The man turned. My name's Cole Evans. I'm from the Department of Financial Crimes. Randall's eyes darted. I have rights. Yeah, Cole said, pulling out a folder. You also have 43 wire transfers with no source explanation, all tied to offshore accounts. We're going to need you to come with us. Randall tried to step back, but two agents blocked the exit. That was it. The man who once smiled on magazine covers now stood alone in a mirrored elevator, watching his empire crumble around him. At Ashline, cheers broke out. The stock surge was immediate. Thousands of small investors who followed the story dumped their money into Ashline's new transparency-driven fund. Olivia was offered interviews on morning shows. Benny was now affectionately called the hug that rebuilt Wall Street. And Malcolm? He stood in the back of the room, quiet, not smiling, just breathing. That night, after all the noise, Olivia found him sitting on the hood of a borrowed car under the stars. You did it, she said softly. No, he replied. We did. You, Benny, the whole team. And every person who believed we weren't just rebuilding a business. We were rebuilding trust. She sat beside him. So what now? I don't want to be the man I used to be. I don't want a penthouse. Or the jets. I want a life where I earn people's belief. And the billions. He smiled. Let them chase it. I'll take purpose instead. A pause. Then Olivia reached in her purse and handed him a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, cut diagonally, wrapped in foil. From Benny, she said. He says your first one was squished. Malcolm looked at it, then burst out laughing, full, deep, and real. Maybe he had lost everything, but somehow he had found something far greater. It was a crisp autumn morning when Malcolm Wade stepped onto the stage at the American Investors Forum, the same one he used to dominate in tailored suits and stock forecasts. Now wearing a navy blue pullover, his sleeves pushed up, eyes focused calm. Olivia, standing backstage with Benny, whispered, You nervous? Malcolm smiled faintly. I'm not here to impress anymore. I'm here to tell the truth. The lights dimmed. The chatter faded. He approached the podium, took a deep breath, and leaned in. 6 months ago, he began, I sat outside a convenience store, completely hollow. My career was over. My name was poison, and I thought I had no one left. Until a little boy walked up and hugged me without asking who I was, or what I had done. The screen behind him lit up, a photo of Benny's arms wrapped tightly around him on that sidewalk. The audience froze. I built billion-dollar portfolios, but I didn't know the value of human capital until I lost all my financial ones. That hug reminded me, I'm not just a CEO, I'm a man, and I needed to be one again before I could rebuild anything. He paused, voice steady. Today, Ashline Equity manages over $3.2 billion. Not by promising profits, but by promising transparency, dignity, and ethical reinvestment. We don't bet on numbers. We bet on people. Thunderous applause shook the hall. But Malcolm raised a hand. Before you clap for me, there's someone else who deserves it more. He turned toward the wings. Benny. The boy stepped onto the stage, eyes wide, little sneakers squeaking against the floor. Malcolm knelt and offered his hand, but Benny ignored it and hugged him just like he did that first day. The crowd stood. Tears flowed. Cameras flashed. And somewhere in that moment, the financial world realized. A 6-year-old boy had done what Wall Street never could. He taught a billionaire how to feel again. Later that day, back at the Ashline office, Benny colored rocket ships on printer paper while Olivia sipped tea at her desk. Malcolm watched them, hand resting thoughtfully on a stack of signed ethics pledges from over 200 new companies joining their human-first investing program. He walked outside to the rooftop. The city skyline blinked back at him, alive, electric, full of chances. Then his phone buzzed. An old contact. He hesitated, then answered. Wade, came the voice, nervous, cautious. I've been watching. I want in. I'm tired of playing the game the wrong way. I want to work for something real again. Malcolm smiled. Then come by tomorrow. But don't bring your resume. Huh? Why not? Bring your story instead, he said. We invest in those now. That night, after Benny fell asleep and Olivia started reading beside the fireplace, Malcolm stood outside the front porch of the small home they'd begun to rebuild together. Not as a couple, not yet, but as something more powerful. As a family forged in fire. He looked up at the stars and whispered, You were right, Benny. If you don't eat, the sad eats you. And just then, he pulled out a crumpled sandwich wrapped in foil from his pocket. The one Benny had given him the day Ashline launched. He smiled and took the first bite.